Hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about Total War 40k, because, someone has to, right? Creative Assembly are waiting until summer, but I must admit that I haven't really been thinking about it too much until I saw the announcement of Yarrick recently returning to 40k. It sparked an interesting characters again for me for 40k, as mostly I used to field my armies with my own custom Smash Captains, as most people did. But obviously we want named characters in Total War 40k, and yeah, it would be kind of cool to see some themed armies around their own factions, and today I want to talk about just that. My 5 most anticipated characters. But before anything, a big thank you to our sponsor, Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming is a platform where you'll be able to buy games at a discounted rate. There's loads of games on offer, even those that haven't released yet, like Crimson Desert, which a lot of people seem quite hyped about. I want to check it out myself personally. We're in that period that game developers feel free from the fear of GTA 6, so they're trying to get their games out before GTA takes all the attention away. There might be a few games that interest you, so why not get a good discount on your products rather than paying full price, because yeah, gaming is going to get quite expensive now. Not only that, but we have our monthly giveaway going on. Win the game of your choice. All you gotta do is click on the link in the description below and sign up. You don't even have to make a purchase. Making a purchase, however, using my special link also in the description below, supports the channel at no extra cost to you. This is a company that I myself use, which is why I'm happy to promote them. I buy games from them all the time, and it just makes sense to work with a company that I am comfortable using rather than going with random sponsors everywhere. So a big thank you once again to Instant Gaming for the sponsor. Let's return to our regularly scheduled programming. Alright, so for this specific video, there are thousands, we have to acknowledge the fact that there are thousands of characters in Warhammer 40k. I'm only going to talk about maybe 5, but it's going to be ones I feel very strongly about. And I'm sure people are going to have their own thoughts and feelings regarding the characters that I'm listing, because everyone has their own favourite. One thing is for certain, I'm not going to list the Primarchs, mostly because, look, let's be fair, it's the Super Friends, and it just always felt odd for 40k to have them return. The Demons, it's fine, but the Guilliman surviving 23 stabs in the back and then coming back, wild, right? He's popular and he's cool, but there's far more interesting characters than a Ultramarine. So let's jump in. So we're going to start off with an Emperor's Children character, which I think most people were expecting in the #1 spot, but Lucius the Eternal is a fantastic character, very grim, and a melee-focused character, which will be very different to what most people expect. I think a lot of people are expecting a lot of shooting, but melee does actually show some prevalence in the 40k universe. Lucius is a member of the Emperor's Children, recently had a model update, as you can see, and he is awesome. An expert blade master known as one of the best around, and killing him is, well, nearly impossible. You see, Lucius as a character has died many times in lore, but the problem is, if someone takes satisfaction in killing Lucius, they'll slowly start to get corrupted, and Lucius will be reborn anew in the killer's body, with whoever took Lucius down having their soul trapped in the power armor known as the Armor of Shrieking Souls. The Lash of Torment, that big whip that you see on the more recent model, is actually the essence of a demon head bound to the weapon, where it would basically constrict the enemy. But it would do a lot of psychic and psychological damage as the lash rips them apart. You might be wondering about his very, admittedly cool sword, but the Blade of Lair is actually more of a generic power sword now than anything else, as there is no demon no longer trapped within it. But this doesn't mean that it's a useless blade, because as you are more than likely aware, Lucius fought mostly in melee, where he's been specifically hunting down some of the best fighters throughout the galaxy and challenging them on one-to-one combat, or dying in the attempt and then just coming back. That's not to say that his potential return makes him cocky, but he has been able to slay, Black Templars, Death Guard, war bosses, even Drukhari. The idea here is, this is a character that wants to prove his worth. And it's very, in fact, Slaneshi. I could imagine him in-game having bonuses if he leads a faction towards the melee capabilities of the Slanesh warriors, as there is a few. And if he dies, well, there could be a corruption mechanic there, meaning that another character could end up dying, the one that killed him, so he can then be reborn after a few turns. or they might take a similar route that they did with Morga the Shadowgave, which will mean that if he dies, he'll come back the next turn or the turn after just very, very quickly, with wound reduction time being a very prevalent thing. Maybe throughout the whole army if they still go with the whole Immortal Lords situation after a certain point. Now, I'm not expecting the Emperor's Children anytime soon. While Total War 40k is likely going to be a DLC farm, the Emperor's Children roster isn't great at the moment. In fact, it's pretty limited, but that's what happens nowadays with brand new armies, which is pretty weird because Chaos have had that twice now with the Emperor's Children and the World Eaters, so we're going to have to wait and see. But I imagine they'll do Black Legion first and expand from there, like they do Death Guard and the Thousand Sons first, as they have more complete rosters by far. But hey, I waited, what, 7 years to get a full Slaanesh Monogod faction in Total War Warhammer? I can wait again, depending on how they go. Hopefully they'll be faster with DLCs, though. Okay, so here's a surprise for you guys, because I don't think you guys were expecting a loyalist, but we're going to talk about Pedro Kantor, the chapter master of the Crimson Fists. For those not aware, the Crimson Fists are a successor chapter to the Imperial Fists, as the main legions eventually broke into separate chapters post-Horus Heresy to make sure that another legion didn't get large enough to get corrupted and then cause another heresy. Though, mind you, if you've been reading recent 40k lore, the whole thing with 500 worlds and, you know, the Ultramarines have always been very, very large, and it looks like a lot of the chapters are getting large again. But Pedro is a cool character. He actually showed up in a lot of White Dwarfs and a few different mentions of, like, the different codices from various different editions. It was looking like Games Workshop was propping up to be one of the poster boys. Then he suddenly fell away. Though thankfully he has recently returned thanks to the era Indomitus, where his chapter was brought back to a lot of strength and he was elevated to the rank of chapter master. But what makes him so special is he is able to inspire warriors like no other. Because, let's face it, right, the Crimson Fists have dealt with a lot of problems, mostly orcs, a lot of orcs, some Tyranids coming in and obviously some chaotic stuff, but the problem has mostly been orcs. A lot of people see Kantor as a morally right character more than anything else, pledging himself devoted, which I think is probably the better word of saying, just as strongly as possible, not only to the Emperor, but everyone, like the people of the Imperium, above the whole general thing that we kind of see sometimes with some Space Marines, where they want a lot of vengeance, glory, sometimes a little bit of revenge. Gear-wise, he was pretty standard, you know, Power Fist and Iron Halo, crack grenades, frag grenades. He did have a special Storm Bolter back in the day, though, known as Dawn's Arrow, which Storm Bolters themselves are very strong and able to punch through quite thick armor, but this is a relic, and relics generally are better than the standard variants. So this one has a higher rate of fire and able to pierce through even stronger plates of armor. It'd be great if Kantor was shown up. I could imagine a faction led by him, and this is something that I want to talk about in the future in another video around successor chapters, because I feel like Creative Assembly could do a lot of stuff there, but I feel like this could be a morale boosting type of faction where your troops have higher morale than normal, so they're not going to break as easily, because yes, Space Marines still do break. They wouldn't be unbreakable, but they'll be there holding the line until as little men are left as possible. I feel like this could be fun, especially for those who do like a little bit of warfare, defensive style battles, as is common with the Imperial Fists, but having more of a aggression point for the Crimson Fists. The generic Space Marine model you're seeing is old, and that's because, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't crossed the Rubicon. Though, mind you, if you do search up Pedro Kantor on Google lately, a lot of people have been Primarisifying him, you know, making him unofficially cross the Rubicon Primaris, which would be kind of cool to see him kind of updated into a newer model. I could see him in heavy grav armor, for example. There was a conversion piece that I saw that I'll probably put on the video, actually, because it looks freaking awesome. And that's kind of how I imagine him. But yeah, super cool character. I had to talk about this loyalist. If I was going to talk about one loyalist, it would have had to be Pedro. Alright, we're going to talk about a Necron now, and I think this one's a pretty obvious choice. Trazyn the Infinite. This is a Necron overlord, but he's basically the archivist of the 40k universe, because Trazyn is very much like a crow, and he'll like to pick up every little bit of shinies that he can see and put it in his personal playpen. He's shown up in a fair amount of codices. He's shown up in The Infinite and the Divine, which is probably one of the best 40k books out there. So if you haven't read that, that's probably one of the ones that you'll want to hit. And he's actually shown up in a video game before. I think he was in Gothic Armada 2, at least for the trailer, right? I'm fairly sure Rogue Trader mentioned him recently for like the new upcoming DLC. But what makes this guy so interesting compared to other Necrons is that while a lot of other Necron lords are out there trying to essentially spread death and reclaim lost worlds plus the whole galaxy, which in their mind is theirs by right, Trazyn has just been collecting stuff. It makes him really curious, as he does have his personality. Of course, a lot of high-ranking Necrons have their own personalities. But going for something so left field, so very different to the other ones, makes him quite fascinating. He is curious about literally everything that exists. With all his little shinies acquired in the Solonance galleries, it's essentially his own personal museum. Galleries far as the eye can see, with not only just, say, for example, the husk of an enslaver, but living creatures in stasis, space marines. There are so many things there that even the Adeptus Mechanicus have been actively trying to hunt that down for all the knowledge that could be in those galleries. You could only imagine what weird things could be there, because it has been speculated that there might be creatures and weaponry and artifacts from even different galaxies in the galleries too. Every now and then, Trazyn will want to replenish his galleries or expand upon them, and it can vary, right? He might send a small force to kidnap a diplomat, or maybe even steal some artifacts. Sometimes he'll send out a full-on force, because he wants as much as possible. And literally nobody or nothing is safe, be it another Necron, some humans, Tauseps. Trazyn has always been a really interesting character, and I feel like there's more to him. You know, we've got weaponry which may or may not have the technology derived from the old ones. Scarabs that he uses to control sentient races, and we also know that he can also control the underlings that he has under his control, because they're all implanted with special chips and stuff. Hell, he's able to be the host of another Necron for a while, just changing his form and stuff. This is why Trazyn hasn't died, essentially. I think this is the perfect way of explaining it. He's really difficult to kill because nobody exactly knows where he's actually going to be, or if the Trazyn that they're seeing right in front of them is a copy or not. He's a super cool character. I could imagine, like, such a robust kind of mechanic. Think of it kind of similar to that of Grom the Paunch in Warhammer 3, but using loads of different things to get faction bonuses and ever expanding there too. So rather than a set amount of potential ingredients, in a sense, obviously it would be different for the Necrons, it would have to be just huge. Maybe with every race being added in, whenever Necrons get added in, there's just more and more being added to his mechanic, if Creative Assembly want to do something a little bit more evergreen. Alright, time for a Tyrannid, because Tyrannids are very interesting in the sense that, since they all kind of follow the hive mind, they don't really strike out as their own individual thing. We have had some Tyrannid characters before, but in most cases, they've all kind of just followed the whole thing of a title, right? Like what lies beneath and the rest. And this is why Old One Eye kind of sets itself apart. It's a Carnifex, but a kind of unique one, because the Carnifex itself is powerful. Now, one that can actually just decide to basically ignore mortal wounds, which should have killed it, over and over again, that's very rare. And the general consensus, depending on who is writing it, but in most cases, people believe that when the Hive Fleet retakes the biomass, it'll come back fully healed. Yet Old One Eye has shown up time and time again throughout the galaxy under Hive Fleet Behemoth with all the scars that it's picked up along the way. As you can tell, it's unable to regenerate that, mostly because a plasma pistol shot right into it, and his mutation is becoming more common throughout the Tyranids, especially through, I believe, High Fleet Leviathan. It's one of these things that the Tyranids are always constantly evolving, but it makes him really curious, and it's what is essentially the Tyranid's version of Scarbrand. He's pretty primal and pretty feral, with other Gaunts and Termagants kind of following around him, and obviously even a Genestealer cult kind of worshipping him like a god. I don't know if he'd have his own faction. It's going to be a weird thing to see how Creative Assembly interprets Tyranids as a whole. Maybe more as a named legendary hero if they bring forward that mechanic, but yeah, it's an odd one. I'd love to see, in general, the interpretation of the Tyranids more than anything else. Which I don't imagine a Legendary Lord system for Tyranids. Instead, a High Fleet system, where your Lord, your Legendary Lord, is something that you can't really control on the battlefield, but can give you some bonuses. We're going to have to wait and see, but yeah, I'd love to see Old One Eye in the game. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of having the itch to paint up some Tyranids lately. That might be because of all the Space Marine 2 I've been playing. So, yeah. Alright, the last one. I don't think this one's a surprise considering I mentioned him at the beginning of the video, but Sebastian Yarrick, or Commissar Yarrick, depending on what you want to call him by. But, yeah, I mean, look, this is a character that Games Workshop have tried to kill off, and apparently not. It's just not going to work out. The fan base was too loud. Some people will say, well, you know, they were doing a fake out. I think they were just kind of trying to age him out, considering he's like 600 years old now, and, you know, Games Workshop want to bring in new characters to sell new models and stuff. It does depend there, but he is back and he's better than ever, baby. I'm so excited about this. This is literally why I'm making the video. Literally this character. Because Commissar Yarrick has the biggest balls of steel that you can imagine. He's fought multiple times on Armageddon, driving back waves and waves and waves of greenskins as they invaded over and over again, and yet here he still stands. Yarrick has a profound hatred of greenskins that isn't about Armageddon. You see, he's been dealing with greenskins since he was a little lad, and he's been fighting them, trapping them, and killing them since he was very young. Seriously, I think he was like 10 years old or something, and he was indoctrinated into the Guard because he showed some promise. He was trained up to be a commissar, he learnt the orc language, he studied the mind of an orc, which I know some people might say, oh, well, you know, orcs, they're very unpredictable, but the thing is, they have a way of thinking that most humans would not be able to comprehend without their heads hurting, because the randomness is the way of thinking. It was in the second invasion of Armageddon where he took full control after the incompetence of a former commander, and he's been slapping down orcs at every given opportunity. He of course took some damage, losing one of his eyes and losing one of his arms, but in sheer defiance, pure will and adoration in the Emperor, and of course his hatred towards the orcs, he carried on going, having an orc warlord's power claw attached in place of his right arm, which is wild. This guy, nobody can really take him down. They just call him the Bale Eye. Orcs, other orcs, especially Ghazghkull, see him as the ultimate challenge. If you think about it, in some cases where like some mortals fear demons, some orcs fear Yarrick. Hell, it's kind of speculated and rumored that Yarrick himself actually throws off like war energy. So other orcs see him and are intimidated from that type of thing. It's really odd. This character was rumored to be, you know, killed off during the Era Indomitus, possibly by Angron. Thankfully, that ended up not being true, because goddamn, man, nothing I hate more than killing characters off screen, especially one as cool as this one. The return of Yarrick has been absolutely awesome, even to the point that I got really excited. I've been trying to dig out some of my old Steel Legion metal minis to paint some up. Hopefully it won't be too long. Like, Games Workshop will actually show some proper Steel Legion minis, considering that the last bit of stuff that was shown off with Yarrick was just Kriegers, but I think it's because they're just waiting before they do all the sub-factions. Like, it would be really cool to have it on the tabletop and then also have the Steel Legion represented and led by Yarrick in Total War 40k. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that, yes, Yarrick does have a mount in some cases. Like, there is a personal Baneblade, I think it was called the Fortress of Arrogance or something. I remember a friend of mine, he's got a really, really cool Steel Legion army. It's a shame that he just doesn't reply on WhatsApp, or else I'd ask him to send me a picture so I could put it on the screen. Yeah, like one of these things I'd like to see is like no reliance on mounts. Like have the mount there, but one thing I don't like about Warhammer Fantasy's interpretation Total War Warhammer by CA is too many characters have mounts, even when mounts weren't really a thing for these characters. I understand why they did it, but it's like there's way too much of a reliance on mounts when it comes to that. Everyone has like a dragon, for example, or whatever, you know? It's just odd. Yarrick needs to be on foot, leading from the front, and I could see him just like buffing up guardman troops. Also, maybe making basic guardsmen unbreakable. The idea there would be kind of cool. Just like fighting to the last. They're fighting alongside the most famous commissar of Armageddon. Like, it makes so much sense. But yeah, these are just some thoughts I had, and hopefully we'll see characters implemented in that sense, because like I feel like named characters are incredibly important for 40k, right? Especially when there's loads. It's not just like Creative Assembly's potential about doing loads and loads of DLC, because yeah, they could do a lot of DLC with the characters, but it's these ones that a lot of people grew up with, or newer ones, which have quickly wormed their way into people's hearts. Mostly I've talked about just like classics here, but that just makes sense. Like these are the ones that I kind of grew up with. I've got most of them still in either metal or like Finecast. And now, obviously, I've got Lucius in plastic. I've just got to paint them up. But let me know what characters you're waiting to hopefully see in Total War 40k in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. Yeah, this video should come out on time, I hope. I'm a little bit delayed because... oh god, a lot of stuff is happening in the background, but I've got some plans and some stuff I can share with you guys hopefully quite soon too. Have a great day, everyone, and yeah, I'll see you again hopefully tomorrow. Bye!